I would just like to start this podcast off by saying, coughing is really gross. I just heard somebody coughing. I thought, I'm really blessed by this mask wearing thing. One, because I get to hide my yawns. Two, it promotes antisocialness. And three, you're not breathing in somebody else's coughing fits. Have you ever walked by somebody in the mall and you're like, I think I just breathed that person in, and not in the good way? Alex, this is your probs talking. Speaking of Karens, I am very upset the name Karen has turned into somebody who talks to the manager, because the vintage Frosty the Snowman is epic. And the little girl on there is named Karen, and she is cute as a button, and I love the name Karen. Karen paved the way for Marin. Don't even at me. I know it, and I know it for sure, and I know what I'm talking about, and I love the name Karen. We've got to take our Karens back. Stop talking about how Karen is terrible and making it into memes. You don't even know what you meme. And honestly, the person that you're making memes about probably isn't even named Karen. It's probably like Charity or something. Also, the other thing that I wanted to talk about, because it feels very important and you need to stop everything that you're doing right now. Tay-Tay, Taylor Swift. Woo! I want that girl's name list, because you know it's gonna be epic. Like, sure, James, Inez, and Betty, she didn't name her actual kids that, but she wrote a song about it, so she might as well have. They are freaking awesome names. Ronan, August, which she mentions a lot, and I go back to names all the time. I love Taylor Swift. If you don't even at me. Don't even. She is amazing. She is the songstress of the times. The girl wrote a whole folk album during quarantine. During my quarantine, I was rationing lattes, and she created an entire folk album. So don't even at me. To all the haters, I say, go do what she's done and get back to me. Anyway, I love the name Swift. And I think it would be amazing to name a horse named Swift, or a dog named Swift, or to have a friend named Swift who writes amazing music. Alex, your diary is coming out. Oh my gosh. I just love Taylor Swift. I was recently with my dad and some of his siblings. My dad is the second oldest of 10 siblings, which that's a lot of beautiful names. And so my grandparents had 6 kids, and then my grandma passed away when my dad was a boy, and my grandpa remarried, and they had 4 more kids. And it's been an amazing family experience, because my youngest aunts really feel like my older sisters to me. And it's amazing, and I am so lucky. So we were all sitting around going through old pictures, and my dad was born in the 60s, so you've got all those amazing retro report cards. I learned that Dad didn't do so well in certain subjects, and he was my teacher, so now I know who to blame. Now I know who to blame for everything. So I'm looking through all of these amazing things, and I came across my dad's mom's yearbook. She had this amazing black papered yearbook with those vintage corners, those vintage photo corners. And everybody in her class had given her a picture of themselves in black and white and sign their name, and just poring over this. And it's amazing. And it made me think of, Peggy Sue gets married and the name Susan and Nancy, and I just love those names. I blame Lucy Montgomery for this. By the way, the name Susan and Betsy are in my book, so I've got good taste is what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that I'm kind of a big deal. But afterward, I had this conversation with my dad, and I said, Dad, I have a hard time with death because I don't want to die. I want to live. But also the thing about death that is upsetting to me is that in the past, you only had 2 or 3 generations before somebody looked at your picture and didn't know who you were. And I think about all the people of the earth who never had a picture taken of them, and that makes me sad. And my dad said, well, you're in the age now where you have pictures and videos and it will be different. And I said, yeah, maybe. But I hate this idea of people being forgotten. I love finding out what I'm made of, and I love finding out the people before me, and not all of them, to be honest. Some of them were not great, and it's probably that gene in me that hates people coughing and stuff. Because I don't believe in personal responsibility. I like blaming other people for my problems. Isn't it interesting to think about all the people that came before us? I forget what I was listening to one time. I can't remember anything about it except that I just remember seeing this video of this woman, and she was talking about how she didn't know about her family history, and she went and researched it and found out that basically everybody in her family were like terrible people, like murderers and horrible, horrible people. And she had this total crisis of, these are the people that made me. And then she had this epiphany of saying, I know who I am. I'm not a murderer. There are these people before me who made terrible decisions, but I'm my own person. And I think that we're all this beautiful mix of that we have all of this potential. We can say, yeah, I've got some murderers in my fam, but I'm my own person, and I don't murder people. And that's the hope, right? At least I didn't murder anybody. I might have yelled at them in the car to stop coughing, but I didn't murder them. Sometimes when I'm in the store and I don't want to be there, which is every time, and I'm pushing my cart out, and this one wheel has 3,000 people's hair stuck in it, and it's not turning very well, and there's a person who stops right in front of you to check their receipt. Sometimes I think inside, I wish my shopping cart had a bumper on it or a cattle guard or something, because I would just gently and politely push them off to the side. I wouldn't really do that, but sometimes I think about it, but at least I'm not a murderer. Everyone backs away slowly from this podcast. But you know what I mean. We all have this crazy mix, and I think a lot of times we end up shutting our door unintentionally, that we don't realize what we're made of. I get emotional thinking about Susan B. Anthony, because that chick one time, she was arrested and fined for voting, and she never paid the fine. That is how badass she is. Oh my gosh. The name Susan is so freaking amazing. Have you ever read her history? She went before us. That is amazing. Who wouldn't want to name their kid Susan? Did I mention I put Susan in my book? everybody's like, why are we here? I just love Lucy Maud Montgomery. Everybody calls her Lucy Maud Montgomery, but she actually just wanted to be called Maud because Lucy to her was an old lady name. And now we're naming our daughters Lucy and saying Maud is such an old lady name. It's just craziness. Names are just fashion, that's all. So Maud, you want to see her name lists? Read her books. She wrote about Esme long before Twilight. She had amazing taste, and that just fueled my love of names as a teenager. Her characters were complete. Ugh! She is so talented. I read this book called House of Dreams last summer. Shout out to the authors who don't write anything for getting me that book. And it was basically her biography put into novel form, and the woman who wrote it did such an amazing job of telling Maud's story in Lucy Maud Montgomery type of way. It really brought her life into character. And she had such a sad life. And yet her books always ended on a positive note. She wanted her character's problems to end in victory, because her life didn't end up that way. So as she was writing those victories, she was trying to conquer her own sadness. Wow! She wanted to be known for the good. That no matter the mistakes, tomorrow is a fresh day with no mistakes in it. And her life was so troubled. But we know her for what she's written. And that is so powerful. Oh my gosh. I really hope that my granddaughter listens to Taylor Swift Reputation and Folklore and goes, my grandmother had amazing taste. And because of her name book and because of Taylor Swift, my kids are named Ronan. Okay, guys, thank you for coming along on this journey with me. I hope you had some good coffee. Go listen to Folklore, especially 7, especially Exile, especially the whole thing, especially Great American Dynasty. Sorry, I've got a reputation to uphold. Love you guys. I'll chat with you later. Have a good day or a good night, but especially have a good life.